Hey everyone, and welcome back to NDC. Ever wonder how users type text into your beautiful SwiftUI apps, from entering your email on a login to jotting down notes in a journal app, or even searching for that perfect GIF? Text input is fundamental to almost every interactive application. Today we're mastering the essential trio of SwiftUI text input elements: TextField, SecureField, and TextEditor. We'll deep dive into what they are, when to use each one, and all the powerful ways to customize them to fit your app's needs. Let's go ahead and get typing. Okay, so I just have a blank SwiftUI file on Xcode here, and let's start off with the absolute basics. All three of these views rely on a state binding to store the user's input. This is how SwiftUI knows to update your view when the text changes, and how you can read the text. So under our structure of content view, or whatever you may have called it, but before the variable body of some view, this is where we can declare our state variables, environment variables, bindings, etc. We're going to use the @ symbol, followed by state, give it var for variable. We want this to, be mutable after all, and then we'll give it a name. So for this example, I'm going to do username, and I'm going to use camel case, so that compound word, starting with a lowercase, and name with a capital N. We'll then want to give it the data type. So in this case, string holds text after all, and we'll give the string a value. We'll just have it be an empty string, so just equals, space, and then double quotation marks. First up, we're going to go down to our VStack, and we're going to do the text field. This is your go-to for single line text input like names, emails, or search queries. So we can define it by doing text field, capital T and F, and we're going to need to provide it with some parameters. And we can use the autofill feature here. We can see that the title, which is a string protocol, this is going to be our placeholder text. So we can say enter username, and then we have a comma and the text. Now this is a binding value, and it also wants it to be a string. Well, good thing we've already declared our state private variable, which is that string value. Now to insert that binding, we need to use the $sign followed by the name of the variable. The $sign indicates a binding, creating that two-way data flow. We can see on our preview here that we do have the username, and we can actually click on it and start typing. And as we type, you'll notice that our placeholder, while it's empty, it will display the enter username or whatever you've decided. And as we add text, it will be gone. So that's pretty cool. Next up, we also have the secure field. Now keep in mind, when we're creating another field, you'll probably want another variable to be bound to it. So let's create another state private var, and let's call this one password. We'll also want it to be a string, and we can have it be empty. Make sure there is a space after the equal sign. We'll declare our secure field. We can also provide it with the title and the text. So we can do enter password. And for the text, let's go ahead and hook this up to our password, just like we've done with the text field. Now you'll notice something different. So as we type into usernames, and when we type in the secure field where we have our password, it is hidden with these kind of dots, so you can't see what I'm typing. So this is perfect for password, pins, or any sensitive data. On your end, just to make sure that things are displaying, we can use string interpolation, but for an actual app, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but okay for testing. So what we can do is we can display our text down here, password, we'll say that it is hidden, and we'll use the / followed by the brackets, and look at that password variable. We don't need to make it a binding because we're not sending or receiving information from it. So let's type out the password now, 123. It will show here, but it'll be hidden. But just know it's not saving the variable as these dots, but rather it is saving that data. Just never actually display this in a real app. Kind of defeats the purpose, right? Okay, last one I want to show you before we go into styling is the text editor. Once again, we'll create a state private var. Call this one notes, make it a string value, and we can actually have this equal a placeholder if we'd like. We can say, type your notes here. All right, under this text of hello world from our default, I'm going to go ahead and add our text editor. Now with this one, we'll be able to include the binding of text. So here we'll do the $, notes. We can see here on the screen, type your notes here. And the cool thing about this is it gives you that multi-line customization. And as we type, you can see all the text. It will have, that property to wrap, etc., etc. So with the text field, the first one we explored, this is great for those one-liners, password, any sensitive data. Then the text editor, notes, comments, detailed description, when you need to be writing a lot more. It also expands to fit content by default, but we can also constrain its frame layout if we need. So after the text editor, we can perhaps add a dot frame, and let's constrain its height to be 100. Also might be a little bit hard to see the frame currently, so let's go ahead and add a border just to show how it looks. We'll make this one maybe yellow so it stands out. So if we were to comment off the height, you'll notice that it kind of expands to fill everything out. So you may want to use frames to constrain it. Now, if you're curious about the keyboard, you can't use the keyboard in preview, but we can definitely use it either on your device or on the simulator. Okay, so we can select either of these kind of text input options, and natively it should pop up your keyboard. Otherwise, while the simulator is selected, you can go to Device, I/O, Keyboard, and toggle software keyboard on or off, or you can do the Command K key binding on your Mac. You can see how we can use this to type as well. You will also notice when you press return in the text field, it'll take you out of the keyboard mode. So that is the bare bones. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about customization. So one of the most important UX improvements is setting the correct keyboard type. This changes the on-screen keyboard we were just looking at to match the expected input. Let's test this out. After our text field, we'll do the .keyboard type, and you can use the dot notation. So within the brackets, press the period, and you can see all of the different keyboard types from web search, Twitter, email address, number pad, etc. These are all different keyboards. Let's try out the email address one. Then for the secure field, let's do the .keyboard type. And let's set this one to be number pad. And then for our text editors, just so we can test it all out, let's have this one be keyboard type .url. Okay, let's go ahead and run it, and you can feel free to test out all of these different keyboard types as you'd like. Each one of them has its own purpose. All right, so for our username, we've selected the email address one, and you'll notice now that our keyboard has this @ symbol, really handy and ready to go, even the dot, so we can do .com, etc. When we go to the password, which we've selected as the number pad, we have the number pad here for the users to use, right, if you're entering things like phone numbers, pins, etc. And then for our notes, we've chosen the URL one with the // and even the .com available directly on the keyboard. So play around with these different values. There's going to be a best keyboard for your users and for your specified task. There's a lot more customization that we can do as well. Let's talk a little bit about auto capitalization and auto correction. If we want to handle automatically capitalizing things, let's say you're entering a form with your name, maybe business addresses, etc. We want to make sure that we're always starting off with a certain capital somewhere. We can use the .text input auto capitalization. Again, always recommend using the autofill here. Then within the brackets, we can use our dot notation. We can choose, do we want to capitalize automatically characters to never do it? Maybe that's good for usernames, sentences, so the start of every sentence, or words. Let's try out the words and see how that one works. This should capitalize every single word. So I'm just going to type without the shift on my keyboard. Hello, how are you? And then every time there's a new word, it's starting it off with a capital. If we were to do none instead, as I type, it's not auto correcting anything. Now keep in mind with, actual English, it is pretty good at being like, oh, hey, it should always start off with a capital, or I should always, but it's not overwriting anything. The sentences will do the first letter in every sentence. Never will not capitalize anything. That kind of overrides it. The character defines auto capitalization behavior. Capitalize every single letter. Ooh, let's try this one. Will this just seem like I'm a little bit aggressive? Yeah, it's like having caps lock on. Can't really test this one that well in our secure field, although for passwords, it might be a good idea to have the auto capitalization set to none so people don't mistype their passwords. We can also set the auto correction. So you could do so by auto correction disabled, because otherwise auto correction is on by default. This is really good for names. Maybe my word was like Nate and it might think I'm trying to spell something else. This will basically ensure that no matter what I type, it's going to not have that auto correction. So really great for usernames, names where, people might get frustrated being like, I'm trying to type my name and it keeps auto-correcting it. I'm sure it's happened to everybody. OnSubmit is another really powerful action. So what we can do is after, let's say the text field, maybe we want to use this for a search field. Go ahead and call this one search. After the text field, we can do the onSubmit. We're going to choose the option with code. So the onSubmit basically says, anytime we press the return on the keyboard, what do we want to have happen? You can also press the done key as well. So in this case, let's go ahead and just print, search started for, and then let's look at, we just kept it called username, but just for our purposes, just so we can see how it works. We will need to test this one out in the simulator. So let's go ahead and search for, I don't know, bananas. Bring up the keyboard again. I'm going to hit return. We can see in our print statement console down here, search started for bananas. So you can use this to, when you hit return, to maybe log people in. It's up to you, but hitting the return key either on the keyboard or when people are actually using the app, return or done will have those actions take place. Styling is really crucial for integrating inputs into your app's design. Many modifiers that are persistent throughout text design in SwiftUI work great. We can change things like the font. So if we want to have it really big, have it be, maybe title 3. We can also change the foreground style to change the color of the text. So maybe we make this one blue, and now our text is blue. We can also add padding around the element. Even changing the background. So if we do the top background and we give it a color, let's do gray. Although that might kind of hide our search term. Well, yeah, a little bit cursed. Let's even change the opacity. Let's have it be 0.2 so it's not as aggressive. I'd also recommend checking out the .TextFieldStyle. There are a few options here. There's automatic, plain, and rounded border. I really like rounded border. You can instead also opt to use the overlay, so .overlay with the content. And instead in the brackets, we're going to do maybe a rounded rectangle with a corner radius. And maybe let's set this one to be 10. We can also add a stroke, play around with it. Let's make this one blue. And let's add a line width. Oh, we don't need style. There we go. So you can play around with this. You can make your text fields your own. There's so much that you can really do. Something I also want to point out in SwiftUI and in Xcode in specific, you can open up the inspectors panel. It's a little bit weird when sometimes you open it, but if you go to the attributes inspector, it kind of looks like these 3 lines. Again, you might have to refresh it real quick. You can adjust things like the placeholder text, add your accessibility labels, right? We added the font, the frame. If you want to change these styles with the defaults, feel free to do so as well. Now, the last thing I want to show you is actually called focus states. The default focus that's been added in SwiftUI is generally pretty good. So let's say I click on this search field. It's pretty good at shifting. You'll see how our view kind of shifts between these things. So if I click on the password, or if I click on the search field, you'll notice that the view shifts a little bit. So by default, focusing is one of these things that's already built in. However, if you do want to manually add that focus, let's say when I'm clicking this text editor down here, for some reason it's not moving, I'm going to show you briefly how to do this, but this is a little bit more niche. Here we have our state private variables. We're going to add an @focus state. This is also going to be a private var, and we're going to call this focus field. It's going to conform to the field, and we're also going to use our question mark to make it an optional value. Then above our structure, we're going to create an enum called field. We're going to make it hashable, add our brace, and let's add some cases. The first one will maybe be our username, and the second one will be our password. Okay, so let's say when I hit submit on our text field, I want to then shift the focus field to our password. So if we remember, when we hit return, let's say we're submitting something, we can use the .onSubmit with our code. We're going to set our focus field to then equal the .password case. One more step we need to do is we need to assign each of these fields to belong to one of those enum cases. So for our text field, we can do the .focused, and we can use the condition. Well, this is going to be based on the focused field. And then we'll do the comma equals, and for this one, it would be the username. We can go ahead and copy and paste this to our secure field, and we'll just update the equals to be password instead. So essentially, we've created these different cases of the focus field, and now upon pressing return, it should adjust us from the username one back to the password to be focused. You can handle this logic however you'd like. Even if you want to create a button that takes you to a certain text field on the form, up to you. But let's go ahead and see this in action real quick. So we should basically we should hit return on the kind of search field we have here, which was our username. We're gonna open up the keyboard, hit return, and it's shifted that focus down to the password. You'll also notice I didn't click on the password field. It's just automatically said, hey, you're gonna be typing here now. You can use that focus to allow users to very easily fill out those forms. Maybe we can have one, after the password, and we submit that. We can then maybe go to notes field, right? Okay, just want to give some common tips as well as talk about some pitfalls to help you master that text input. Really common question, when to use which? Well, text field, this is for single line input. If the user types too much, it will truncate and scroll horizontally. Text editor is great for those multi-line text options. So here I'm just going to start typing 3, and look, we're kind of getting taken over. So if you have a lot of text, the text editor is great for paragraphs or notes, handles line breaks and vertical scrolling automatically. However, I do recommend for the text editor giving it a set frame, maybe height, maybe a fixed size. Our secure field is great for sensitive data. Plain and simple, never use a text field for passwords, and crucially, once you get a password from a secure field, do not store it directly in your app or log it. Send it maybe to a backend for authentication. I'll talk a little bit more about binding. So we were using these state variables. This is foundational. Without it, your input field won't reflect changes and you won't be able to retrieve the user's text. So if we need to store a username, display it to the user in like a profile or something, that's why we need that state binding. You can even look at this variable and you can even check it, right? So if we look at things like the password, we can use conditions like if password dot is empty. You can use like the dot count to check lengths. I do have a video on form validation if you'd like to check that one out. One more thing, another common UX annoyance is when the keyboard stays on screen. A simple solution is to dismiss it when the user taps outside of the text field. So you've completed the SwiftUI Text Input Masterclass. You now understand the core differences between the text field, SecureField, and TextEditor, how to customize them for better UX and essential practices. I didn't show you everything, but play around with those properties, whether it's the different keyboard types, the autocorrection, or the auto capitalization. There's a lot that you can do and get really in depth with it. If you want a challenge, go build a simple form using all 3 elements, experiment with those keyboard types, add some styling, and try to implement basic validation. Again, I do have a form video if you want to check that out. If this deep dive helped you understand SwiftUI text inputs better, please hit the like button, subscribe for any more SwiftUI content, and some developer tips. Happy coding, and remember, dream big, code bigger, and have an amazing day.